Hello lovelies, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll be showing you how I made this pleated wide leg palazzo jumpsuit with Gigot sleeves. So if this is what you're interested in, please keep on watching. So I already have the cutting tutorial for this in my previous video. It's just the video before this, so please do well to make reference to that one, because in this video I'm just going to be showing you how I sewed everything together. So without wasting much time, let us get right into the video. So I have my fabrics cut out here already. I have my top front pieces here and I have the back pieces as well. And for every piece I cut out, I also cut out lining for them, and I ironed hairstay on everything, both the main fabric and on the lining. So it's optional. If you want to iron hairstay on it, you can. If you don't want, that's fine. I just did this because I want to give this fabric some strength. And then for the palazzo part, I also went ahead to draft it. So please do well to make reference to the previous video where I have the cutting tutorial so that you can follow up from here. Now I'll just begin sewing everything together. So turning this top front piece to the wrong side, I'm going to come down by my bust point measurement. So from the top I came down by 0.5 inches because I added an allowance to that shoulder part. So I'll come down by 10.5 inches, which is my bust point measurement, shoulder to bust point, and I'm just going to draw a straight line across. So I'm doing this so that I can confirm that bust that measurement, the side that there. So I'll come down by 1.5 inches and I'll also mark my bust span measurement on this bust point line, and I'll use a ruler to just connect it to the side this way. So I'm just trying to confirm the bust that measurement. That's why I'm just taking all these measurements here. I'll just pin it down and take it to my machine and sew the bust that down. So this is it after sewing it down. I sewed it on the two pieces of the top front, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to join the lining. So I also sewed the bust that on the lining piece as well. So I'm just going to place the lining on the fabric right sides facing, and then I'll just use my pins to secure it in place so it doesn't really move around. And then I'll sew the mid front and the side. I'll leave the lower part and the armhole part open. So I'll do it for the two pieces of the front. So this is it after sewing it down. Straight down here and on the side, I left the shoulders and the armhole open, and I left the lower part open as well. So I'm just making some notches and I'm turning it inside out so that you can see how everything is. So from here, I'll go ahead and attach it to the band piece. So bringing in this band piece, just one of it, one is serving as a lining piece. Now I'll place the top part on this band piece. So I'm going to mark that midpoint where I have that sharp pointy triangular edge there, and then I'll divide it into two just so that I can accurately divide where the two top pieces are going to start from on this band piece. And then from there I'll start pinning from the midpoint through the curved area of the band and then all the way to the side. So now that one side is done here, I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this other side. So I'll pin from the midpoint all the way to the side. Now I'll just take it to my machine and sew it from one end through the middle to the other end. Now this is it after sewing it down, and then now I'm going to turn it in with the lining. So this is the lining piece I had cut out for the band earlier. I'll just place it first of all at the midpoint there. So I'll make sure those sharp edges are very well aligned. I'll pin it down there, and then I'm going to pin from one side this way all the way to the end, just like this. And then I'll pin the other side as well. So when I'm sewing, I'll start from one end to the midpoint, and then from that midpoint I'll sew to this other end. So after sewing it down like this first, I will now push the top part inside just like this and sew it on top. So I want this band piece to also be fully enclosed. So here I've sewn it like I said. I'm just trying to trim the edges a bit so that when I turn it in, it's going to be smoother on the outside. Now see how it is looking, see how everything's looking outside, fully enclosed like I said. So the next thing to do now is to work on the back piece. So for the back, I'll first of all start by sewing down the darts on the lining piece and on the main fabric. So after sewing the darts, I'll now turn it inside out. So I'll sew from the neckline through the zip allowance and then the side. So I'll leave the lower part and the armhole part open. So this is what I was just saying. I've sewn down the neck area, so I'm going to make some notches all around, and then I'm going to turn it inside out. Now after turning it inside out, this is what I have. I'll go ahead and give it a very good press, and then I'm going to join the back and the front pieces of the top together. So placing it right sides facing like this, I'm going to start by joining the shoulders. So to join that, I will bring the lining piece of the back and cross it over to the front, just like this, making sure that the lining piece of the back on the shoulders is covering all the other shoulder pieces. And I'm going to pin it down this way, and I'll sew it. Doing it this way is going to give it a very clean finish by the time I am done. So I'm just going to pin down one shoulder here, and I'll sew it straight down. I'll also do the same thing for this other shoulder. So I'll just bring the lining piece of the back and I'll cross it over to the front and pin. You can take the front over to the back, it's still going to work. So I'll just sew it across the shoulder like this, making sure that all the pieces are aligned together. So this is it after sewing it down at the shoulders. I'll just cut off the small edge there so that I'm not going to have some bulging at the shoulder point when I turn it over to the right side. I'll do the same thing to this other shoulder. I'll trim it and I'll turn it over, and then this is what I have. I'm just going to place them right sides facing each other, and I'll go ahead and sew the sides. So you take your measurement here and you sew down the sides. I'll just be using 1 inch because I know I kept an allowance of 1.5 inches, but I'm using 1 inch because I had used like half an inch to turn it inside out with the lining. Now I'll go ahead and work on the palazzo part. Now I'm bringing in this palazzo piece I had already cut out. I'm going to just place the pocket aside and I'll start working on the crotch area first. So for the crotch area of the front, I'll be sewing it with 0.5 inches for the seam allowance, and then I'm going to also sew down the back part. But for the back crotch, I'm going to be sewing it with a very loose stitch. Now for this back, you know that I did not add zipper allowance, so I'm going to be using this 0.5 inches as my zipper allowance for the back. So for the front, I'll just take out the back first and then I'll start working on the front. So please pay attention here. Now my round waist, my waist circumference is 32 inches. 32 inches divided by 2 is 16. So this is just the front of this palazzo, right? So this front part is supposed to take half of my waist measurement, which is now 16 inches. Now I'm going to add 2 inches for seam allowance to join to the sides, 1 inch for one side and the other inch for the other side. So I'm going to have a total of 18 inches. Now I'm going to evenly distribute these 18 inches to the two sides. So one side is going to have 9 inches and the other side is going to have 9 inches. You know, this is joined in the middle. So this is like the left and the right front piece. So I'm going to make pleats until I have 9 inches on one side. So I'll start by folding it in from the midpoint. I want one side of this front to have 3 pleats and the other side 3 pleats. So I'm just measuring 2.5 inches there because I want all the pleats to look the same and to be even. So I'm just like scooping 2.5 inches inside, and that's what I'm pleating it by. So I'm just going to secure it here with my pins, and then I want the third pleat to go toward the side, just like this. So this third one, I want it to face this side like this. So I'm just going to scoop it in and also probably measure 2.5 inches, but this one might take more than 2.5 inches. So I'm just confirming if I have up to 9 inches, and this is not up to 9 inches yet. So I'll just keep measuring and confirming, and at this point, yes, I have 9 inches now. I'll hold it down with my pins so that it doesn't move around, as this fabric is very, very light. And then I'm going to just reconfirm again just to make sure that I have exactly 9 inches. So 8 inches here is for my waist circumference measurement divided by 4, since this is 1/2 of the front now, and then 1 extra inch for allowance. Now I'm going to go on to this other side and do the same thing I've done here on this other side. So in case you didn't get it, please pay attention again. So now for this, the first pleat I'm about to start, I'm just measuring what I have on the other side to replicate it here so that I have the same measurements, I have the pleats even. So I just want everything to be very even. That's why I keep measuring and measuring. Now that I have those 2 pleats, the 2 starting pleats, now that I have them the same, they're about 4 inches, I'm going to go ahead and continue with the rest. So I'll just scoop it in and make sure that the scoop I have under, the fabric I have under, is about 2.5 inches. That is, the fold is about 2.5 inches. So I'm going to just pin that, and then I'll make the last pleat that is going to go toward the side. So now measuring up here, I have 9 inches, so everything is okay. I'm just going to go ahead and pin this last part down here. So you see 8 inches is for my waist measurement and 1 inch is for sewing allowance. So confirming the entire thing, you know I needed 18 inches. Everything is 18 inches here. So you just use your measurements to do the same thing I've done here. And now for the back piece, I'm just going to do the exact thing I did on the front on the back. That is why I sewed the zipper area first. So now I also went ahead to sew down a very loose stitch on the waist so that I can hold the pleats down before attaching it to the top part. I've also ironed the pleats, but just at the top there, just at the waist area. I didn't take it all the way down to the end because I don't need those lines at the lower part. I want it to just be free and flowy. Next is to join the sides together. So placing the back on the front, right sides facing, I'm going to just pin the top there and I'll pin the other side as well. Now from the top, that's from the waist, I'll come down by 6 inches and I'll mark 6 inches here. This is for my pocket. So this is where my pocket is going to start from. So I'm just going to place the pocket on the right side of the back and on the right side of the front. Just straight this way. I'll secure it with my pins first, and then on the front I'll also pin it down. I'll take to my machine and just sew across the places I have pinned. So I'll sew the pockets to the main trouser piece first before sewing it on the side. So when I'm sewing it on the side, I'll start from the top and then going over the pocket round, and I'll sew it all the way to the end of the palazzo. And I'll do the same thing for the other side. So now here I've attached the pocket and I've sewed it from the waist around the pocket to the end. And on the crotch area of the back, I've gone ahead to make a tight stitch. You know, earlier I said I made a loose stitch, and my zip allowance is going to be 8 inches from the waist down at the mid back. So now it's time to attach the crotch areas together so that I can sew down the inseam. So making sure that the crotch areas are aligned, I'm just going to secure it with a pin, and I'll sew from one end, that's one leg, all the way through the crotch area and then to the other leg. So here I'm done sewing it. I've attached the front and the back at the midpoint there, and I'm just going to go ahead and loosen up this loose stitch I made earlier at that zip area. Next is to join the palazzo to the top part. So placing them like this, before I join it together, there is a small strip of ankara that is between the palazzo and the top. So I'm just going to cut out that piece of ankara. So I'm going to measure up what I have at the waist area of the top, and what I have is 33 inches. I'm going to cut out a small strip of ankara piece with 33 inches in width and about 1.5 inches in length. So I'll just mark 1.5 inches there and I'll cut it all the way straight by 33 inches. So this is the strip that is going to be in between the palazzo and the top. So to attach it, I'll fold it into two like this, and then I'm going to place it on the palazzo first, starting from that open edge, which is the zip area, that's the center back. And then I'm going to place the top piece on the small strip of ankara that I cut out, making sure that everything is right sides facing. So it's just like you're trying to join or attach two separate pieces of fabric, but this time around there's another fabric in between. I've done something like this in one of my previous videos. So I'll just place it this way, making sure that that ankara piece is folded in the middle. Now using my pins, I'll just secure everything together from the beginning to the end. That's from one zip area to the other zip area. And now I am done pinning everything all around. I started from one zip opening to the other zip opening, and I'll just sew it around that point. So I have a little excess here. I'll trim it off and I'll go ahead and sew it. So this is it after I've sewn it. You can see the small difference. It's just a very tiny detail that it gives to the outfit, and it makes it look beautiful. So on the back part, it's not really obvious because immediately after the ankara is the palazzo. So adding a very small strip of ankara again doesn't really make a difference, but it is obvious in front. So you can decide to only fix it in front. Now go ahead and attach my zipper to it. And here I've attached the zipper, and I used 1/2 inch on the palazzo part to fix the zipper, just like I said. So now this palazzo is almost ready. The next thing to do is to cut out the sleeves. And for the sleeves, I'm also going to be using this ankara to cut out the sleeve. Now I've placed it on a fold here already, and to know how wide to fold, you need to add about 5 inches. Well, I added about 5 inches to my round biceps measurement. So you can add maybe 3 inches or more if you want, more than 5 inches, but I don't want it to be too big. And now for the length of my sleeve, the entire length is 23 inches, but I'm going to be cutting out 4 inches with the chiffon. So for the ankara, I am going to be cutting out 19 inches. So I'll first start from the top here. I'll come down by about 0.5 inches, and that is to serve as an allowance to attach it to the shoulders. So I'll come down by 19.5 inches. So this additional 0.5 is for the allowance to attach it to the chiffon at the lower part. So I'm just going to draw a straight line across this way, and then from this folded edge I would go in by 5 inches. So you know, when you're cutting a regular sleeve, you just start from the folded edge and take your measurements, but I'm going to go in by 5 inches first, and I'll draw a straight line from the top down. So it is from this line I'll start taking my measurements. So this 5 inches is the extra that I need to make my sleeve wide and big. So I'll start taking the rest of my measurements from that 5 inches line I have taken, instead of from the folded edge. I hope you understand. So from this line, this 5 inches line, I'll go in by 4 inches, and then from that 4-inch point I'll come down by another 4 inches, and then I'm going to connect this curve inside. So on that 4 inches I came down by, which is my cap's height, I'm going to go in by my round biceps measurement, which is 13 inches. 13 divided by 2, because this is on a fold, is 6.5. So I'll connect it from this starting line here. I'll take it down with my free hand and just connect it into that point. So when I get to that 6.5 inches, I'm going to take my round armhole measurement. So when I take it, it is not enough. I'm going to add up the extra that is not complete, and then I'm going to add 1 inch for sewing allowance. So now that that top part is done, on this lower part I'm going to take my round arm measurement, where it is going to stop, where I have 19 inches from my shoulders down. What I have there is about 9.5 inches. So divided by 2 is about 4.75 inches, and I'll mark it there and add 1 inch for sewing allowance. So I'll connect it to the top. So you can see that I'm drafting a very basic sleeve without so much allowance. So that 5 inches I went in by from the folded edge is what is going to make up for the wideness of the sleeve. And now I am done with it. I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So now this is it. I'm just trying to show you how I'm going to pleat it at the top and at the lower part, so you can see that it is wide enough. Now I'll go ahead and cut out the lower part of the sleeve, the 4 inches. So I'll fold this up into 2 first. So I'm trying to cut it on a fold because I don't want to start hemming the lower part of this sleeve. It's not going to look flattering at all. Now I'm marking the length first. It is 4 inches I need, but I'm going to mark 4.5 inches because I need ½ inch to attach it to the ankara part. And now for the width, which is my round arm, I have already measured that on the ankara part as well. The round arm is about 9.5 divided by 2, because I'm cutting this on a fold. I'm going to have 4.75, and then I'm just going to cut it out and trim the extras I have on the top there, and the lower part is ready. So this is how it's going to be on my arm on a fold, just like this. I've also cut out a second sleeve for it, just the same thing I did on the first one. Now I'll start sewing these sleeves together. So I'll place it open this way, and then I'm going to open up this chiffon as well, and I'm going to place it right sides facing. But before that, I will mark the midpoint of the ankara part. I'll mark the midpoint, and then I'm going to mark the midpoint of this chiffon just at the middle there. So I'll first of all place them at the midpoint, right sides facing. I'll pin it down, and then I'll place the edges together. So the edge of the ankara, I'll place it to the edge of this. So please, I didn't mention, I also added 1 inch allowance to the chiffon. I added 1 inch sewing allowance. So the chiffon and the ankara have the same sewing allowance of 1 inch. Now, as I've placed them right sides facing this way, I'll go ahead and make some pleats with my hand, some gathers, while I'm sewing it on the machine. So you can run a gather stitch, but I'm just going to be using my hand to pick everything together. So this is it after gathering it down. I have sewn everything. Look how it's looking on the right side, looking very nice. Now the next thing is to sew down the sides of the sleeve. So from the armhole part of the sleeve at the top there, I'll just sew it down by 1 inch. So from the top, I'll go down even the chiffon area 1 inch. Now on this chiffon area, I went in by an extra half an inch. That's toward my wrist area. So just because that part of my arm is smaller than the other parts of my arm. Now I've done the same thing for the other sleeve as well, and now it's time to attach it to the jumpsuit. So now placing the jumpsuit here, I'll just turn it in here and open up the zipper so it will be easier for me to sew. I'll bring the sleeve and I'll place it right side facing with the jumpsuit at the armhole area. So where I have the joining of the sleeve still at that armhole, I'll place it at the armhole part of the jumpsuit. So making sure that they are aligned at that point, at the armhole part there, I'm just going to secure it down with some pins, and then I'll pin it all the way to almost at the joining of the shoulder. So I'm not going to stop at the shoulder point. I'm going to just stop at about 2.5 inches away from the shoulder. That's on one side. So I'll stop pinning at 2.5 inches here, and then on the other side of the shoulder as well, still on this armhole, I'm going to stop at about 2.5 inches. So in total, I'll leave about 5 inches on the shoulder point. On that shoulder area, I'll leave about 5 inches just around there. So that's where I'm going to be making my gathers. So I'm just trying to measure it up here so you can see what I'm saying. So 2.5 inches here, you know, on the two sides. So 2.5 is 5 inches. So is that 5 inches I'll be making the gathers around. So if you don't want your gathers to be too high and puffy at that point, you can spread your gathers evenly all around, or you can just make the top part of the sleeve just flat and you make the lower part big so that you can just gather at the lower part. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So I'm just going to pin it this way and sew around, and when I get to that point I've marked, I'm just going to pick it little by little and make some gathers all around that point until I have exhausted the allowance I kept, and I'll do it for the second side. So here it is after sewing it. I have made the gathers on one shoulder and the other shoulder by attaching the sleeve to the jumpsuit, and everything came out looking really nice. On the lower part as well, I went ahead to hem it by folding it in twice. Thank you guys so much for watching up to this point. Please, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, also share, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I really love the fullness of this palazzo, and considering that this fabric is chiffon and chiffon is light, it came out looking really nice. Thank you so much guys for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.